Hi, I'm Jess.
Hi, I'm Kristen.
And this is Rediscover, a conversation where we travel through everything that makes up the essence of who we are and how to live authentically and imaginatively.
Here, we invite you to join us as we explore and discuss a little bit of, well, everything.
From Disney to cultivating your most authentic life to deepening your relationships and talking about the real stuff.
We hope you'll find this a space that speaks to you, encourages you, and brings a little bit of magic into your day.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jess.
Hi, I'm Kristen.
And welcome back to this week's episode of Rediscover. We are wrapping up a month filled with discussions and interviews of incredible women doing extraordinary things. Today's episode is going to be featuring our beautiful, wonderful friend Taylor, who is someone who's gone on a very interesting life journey, has started her own small business, and who really just loves to express her love of her favorite holiday, Christmas. So we are going to have quite a fun time today, and we are so excited that you're here for this conversation.
Yes, we are kicking off the merriest time of year, but we're about to talk to someone who keeps Christmas in her heart all year round. This is Taylor's version.
Merry Christmas! Yes. Merry Christmas!
Welcome. Merry Christmas!
We don't really have a specific Christmas repertoire planned for Rediscover this year. So this is really going to be our Christmas episode. And it's also focusing on, wrapping up extraordinary women doing incredible things. So Taylor, thank you for being here today so we can share your wonderful story.
Thank you for having me. I still can't believe that you all think that I'm extraordinary, but you are. I'm very ordinary. I have a lot of Christmas spirit. That's the truth.
That is also an extraordinary thing that this world needs more of. So
honestly, though, if everyone had as much Christmas spirit as I did, it'd
be a different world.
Just saying.
The world would be a much better place.
So Taylor has been along for the ride since 2013. And just to give a little background, I followed Taylor on Instagram and Twitter in 2013 and decided to reach out and ask her to make my Halloween costume. So we actually met in a craft store, which is going to make a lot of sense as the episode progresses.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's my favorite story to tell people. They're like, how did you meet Jess? And I was like, I had never met her before. And we met in a Joann's to pick out up fabric for her Halloween costume.
What was your costume?
It was Vidya from the Tinkerbell series. Mark and I were, the fairies from that in 2013. So that was the whole trend. But it was really cool. It's very purple and cute.
And we've been friends since.
I know, crafting really bonds people together. So
crafting is like my love language at this point.
So I think we're just going to kind of hop into it because Taylor, we want to hear all about your story and the crazy journey you've been on since that day at the craft store. It's been wild, but can you give our listeners a little overview of different seasons of your life, I guess, since that time? I think that's when the adventure really began.
Yeah. Okay. So by the time I finish telling this story, I feel like Christmas is going to be over because it's such a long story with so many chapters in it. So I first moved to Orlando in 2013. I transferred from a community college to the University of Central Florida.
Woo-hoo.
And I was majoring in event management. Now, I was so excited when I first moved to Orlando. I was like, I'm going to go to Disney all the time. Everything's going to be sunshine and rainbows.
I love that season of life.
It wasn't my first semester living there, though, which a lot of people don't realize because I think at the time I didn't really talk about that. I was just like, hey, I'm going to leave Orlando, which no one understood. But the reality of it is it just didn't feel like the right timing, I guess. I was in a very toxic relationship. Very toxic relationship. I don't want to get too much into that, but it was not healthy, was not supportive of me and my dreams. When I was like, I want to, go work for Disney, they kind of would laugh at me, which is so funny compared to the relationship I'm in now.
We'll get there.
I also just really missed my mom, and I really struggled. So it was only about a month into me living there, I was like, I can't stay here. And I'm very much a believer that everything happens for a reason. And I was like, why am I so sad? Like, this is supposed to be my journey. Like, this is supposed to be what I'm supposed to do. And I ultimately decided to move back home. I wasn't sure what my step was after that. Ironically, right after I had made this decision, I met Jess, and like Jess and I became the closest friends. I was like, well, cool. Now I made friends. I was like, now I have friends. But I went back home after a semester, and everything happens for a reason. Within a few weeks of me being back home, we found out my mom had a brain tumor, and found out my mom would have to have brain surgery. And I was like, okay, this is the reason I'm supposed to be home right now. Mm-hmm. I'm supposed to be home for this, because if I was in Orlando when that was happening, to preface this, everyone, I'm from Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, known as the Christmas city. So just kind of giving you relatively where I was. I was in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, and went down to Orlando for my spring break. And after that trip, I was like, I want to move back. My mom had her brain surgery. She was fine. And I was like, I'm going to transfer back to UCF now. So went back to UCF that following semester. So that was in the fall semester 2014 then. And now I was like, cool, I'm going to apply to work for Disney.
Oh, and I was in school. My apartment. Remember that?
I did. When Jess went to do, everything's connected. When Jess went to do Disneyland CP, I took over her lease.
Oh, I didn't know that either. Oh my God, learning so much.
All of my furniture for my first 6 months living there back was all Jess's.
That's okay.
It was kind of nice though, because I didn't have to worry about furniture.
I was gonna say, that sounds like it was a win-win for both of you.
Yeah, it was kind of nice. So then started that semester, I was in such a better headspace then. I had some really great friends. Obviously, like there's some friends I'm still friends with. There's some friends that I'm not, because, you know, seasons of life change, but I was in a much better headspace. Started working for Disney. I started in Fantasyland merchandise, which, fun fact, I like to joke around that I'm very good at self-manifesting. I applied for merchandise because I was like, I have retail experience and I've worked at Build-A-Bear. So I was like, merchandise, like that sounds like my vibe. Yeah. But I specifically, and I said this to Jess beforehand, I said, I want Fantasyland merchandise. I said it. I was like, because it'll be easier for me to transfer to the Bibbidi Bobbidi Boutique one day. Like I had this mindset a year before. Fun fact, I worked in the boutique. We're going to get there. Walked into my interview, didn't mention it. They offered me Fantasyland. And I was like, meant to be.
Taylor's very good at manifesting before we even know what it was.
It's going to get more wild. Just wait. About a year into me working at Disney, it was a little bit less than that. I had a really bad shift in merchandise. It just was, I was like, I want to transfer now. Applied to transfer to the boutique. I was so blessed to be able to transfer to the boutique. Best job I've ever had in my life. I was like, this is it. First of all, Bibbidi Bobbidi Boutique is the most magical thing in the world. And Fairy Godmother is my inspiration in everything I do. I'm literally looking at a picture of Fairy Godmother above my head right now with Cinderella, because I am trash for Fairy Godmother. So I transferred to the boutique, I think it was July 2015. Somehow between me transferring back and forth, I still graduated from college a semester early. And
wow. I was like, honestly, that's amazing.
Right? I was like, don't know how I did that, but I'm here for it. Graduated college in December 2015, and I was still in the boutique, and I really wasn't sure what my next step was. I was like, I have a degree in event management now. Of course, like when I first started college, my like dream job was Disney fairy tale weddings. But then I got to college and I was like, I don't want to work in weddings. There's a lot of reasons why I don't want to actually work in weddings, but I was like, I can't have that be the only thing I do. So wasn't really sure what I was going to do. Then I had the incredible opportunity to transfer to entertainment. I got a full-time entertainment position.
Yay.
Yay. Loved every second of it. I'm so, so grateful for that opportunity, because it was always something I wanted to do, was something I never thought I'd be able to do. And even though I only did it for 6 months, I'm so grateful. I'm not going to talk about it too much because I know there's a question about him. Met my husband while working in entertainment. And then, spoiler alert, my husband's Canadian. So at the end of that summer, he had to move back to Canada. And then I was very depressed and sad. Yes, we lived with each other at the time.
We did.
I was very sad. And my school loans also then kicked in. It's very hard to pay a UCF tuition school loan when you're an out-of-state student working at Disney.
Mhm.
Yeah, you got to get that Florida residency.
Yeah, I did not. And it was, I was like, I can't stay here and live here. And I also, it came down to my boyfriend at the time now lives in another country.
Mhm.
How am I going to afford to go see him? So I had to make the unfortunate decision to leave Disney, and I moved to Charlotte, North Carolina, which is where my parents were living at the time. Well, they still live there. And I moved in with my parents, and I was like, I don't really know what I'm doing. I was like, okay, time to find a hospitality job. Where can I go with this? And I knew going straight for an events job was not going to work. I was like, I don't have really a lot of event experience other than the experience I had in college. So I was like, I need to get like in the door. So I applied for some hotels as front desk, knowing that one day I'm going to transfer to events. Remember, manifesting queen over here. I was like, I'm going to do it. Started out working as front desk. Honestly, not the most glamorous job in the world. I did not enjoy it, but it was a job. I was good at it. I became a trainer. After a year and a half of that, I had been applying to promotions in the hotel and wasn't getting anything. And I was like, I've put in the time. I'm really good at my job. This isn't going anywhere. Then I went on a trip to Florida. And for some reason, why do I decide to make major life decisions every single time I visit Florida after I leave? This happened like a day after I hung out with Jess too, which is funny. I'm sitting in the airport waiting to go back to North Carolina then. And I decided to go on Disney Careers. Scrolling. I'm looking at Disney World and I'm like, nothing really interests me. Me being me was like, let's look at Disney Cruise Line. What are they hiring for? The Bibbidi Bobbidi Boutique.
Oh my
Now,
God.
I had applied for boutique on the ships before when I first graduated college, when I was like, I don't really know what I'm doing with my life. And I also had no ties to anything at that time. Had never heard anything, because DCL is one of those things that either you hear back right away or you never hear a thing.
I've heard that. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's insane. First of all, people also get hired for DCL and wait months to join the ship.
Mm-hmm.
Between the time I interviewed and the time that I boarded the Disney Fantasy, it was less than 2 months.
Oh my God.
So it was very fast. Now,
oh my gosh.
Yeah, Disney Cruise Line and me were not the best of friends.
But you did it.
And I don't
It's a hard life.
It's very hard. And I don't want to sit here and bash them, because I am still so grateful for that opportunity. I'm sorry. You asked me to give me a summary of my life, and now I'm just like, it's a lot. So
it's
I'm
so
sorry.
hearing your
life.
story.
So Disney Cruise Line is very hard. You work 12-hour days, especially in the boutique. There's days you literally do not see the sunlight, because you go from your crew cabin upstairs and you don't go outside and see fresh air. There was a point on the ship where I was like, I don't think I've breathed fresh air in 5 days. It happens so fast, and it's so unhealthy. And there are some people that they love that life.
Mm-hmm.
Me, being me, I totally skipped over my engagement in this whole thing. I just realized, by the way, I was engaged at this point. I skipped over that somehow.
Well, we'll get to Julian in the next question.
We'll get there.
And that's why I was like, I'm not even stressing about it. I was engaged, which a lot of people were like, I can't believe you're going to go work on a cruise ship when you're literally trying to plan a wedding. But I was like, it just felt right at that time. I was like, I have to do this. I felt this, I need to do this for myself. I have the most wonderful husband in the entire world, and the most supportive husband in the entire world, which we will find out, because that's just how he is. So I'm on the ship. My actual job, Bibbidi Bobbidi Boutique, and I also got to do Pirates League, which was so fun, because I got to yell at people, which I didn't ever get to do as a fairy godmother, but I loved my job. And that was the challenging thing, is I would go to work and I would be so happy all day. The second my shift would end, or the second I would go to break and I would be in my crew cabin, I would be in hysterical tears, talking about how much hated my life.
Ooh, I can so relate to that. Yes.
It's insane. And it was like, I was like, what's wrong with me? I love my job so much, to the point where they would say, we had mornings off on the ship. We never had days off, but occasionally we would have mornings off where we wouldn't have to come until 2. They would be like, is there anyone that's supposed to be off that can come in? I'd be like, I'll come in, pick me. Yeah. I could have gone to an island. I could have gone and gotten coffee in St. Thomas, or gone to Starbucks in Mexico. But I was like, I would rather be at work. So let's just say I was depressed.
Yeah.
Julian came to visit me. He sailed for a week on the ship. Right after that, Jess came and sailed on the ship.
Yes, I did.
And then I didn't have people there anymore. And now I had made some really good friends on the ship, but I only had very few of them. And I felt very isolated still. And I was struggling. I had this like huge mental breakdown about wanting to quit. And one of my coworkers was kind of like, you have no reason to be sad. And I was like, okay, we're just not going to be friends anymore because I can't deal with that.
We cannot tolerate that energy at all.
No.
I started getting panic attacks at work because some of the people I worked with were mean. And I was like, would have panic attacks. I hope none of them listen to this because they're going to be like, man, she's dramatic. But I was just not in a good mental headspace.
Your feelings are valid. It is okay.
Yeah. We're getting towards the end of my contract. I have like 6 weeks left. And then probably the funniest thing that's ever happened to me. I was in the stock room and it was a pirate day. I remember I was wearing a pirate costume and I was talking to my good friend Colin. I really hope he listens to this episode. That he's better featured.
Hi,
he
Colin.
Better.
Love you.
Jess is friends with him too now because everything's connected.
I know.
Colin talks with his hands and hits a chair and it falls on my foot.
Oh no!
I immediately start crying, but I'm also laughing. And I turned to Colin and I went, maybe it'll be broken and I'll get to go home early. Spoiler alert, my foot was broken.
Taylor.
It's really Christy's probably never heard this story.
There's so much about like, I just have to take a second. I know like Jess obviously probably knows all of this, but like hearing all of this for the first time, and obviously it's a retrospective view of your life, but every single thing is like one after the other. Like I thought this and then this happened. I said I wanted this and then this happened. Like the trajectory of your life is just like so mind-bogglingly.
Sometimes you just really gotta manifest.
Holy
Taylor's so powerful. Seriously.
That is wild.
We're
that
not
is
even
wild.
done with the manifest. There's more. Like,
Carry on.
They have the X-ray machine on cruise ships.
Oh,
they
that's
take
good
an
to know.
X-ray. It doesn't come up as broken though. Another fun fact: the medical center aboard cruise ships is not very nice. I was in so much pain, like could not put weight on my foot. At one point, they told me that I was faking the pain to get out of work. Like, and this was going on and on where I would go to the medical center every single day and be like, I can't put weight on my foot. And they were like, you're fine. And I was like, no, I'm not. Finally, a week goes by. And now I wasn't working during this time. I couldn't walk. So I was isolated to my tiny crew cabin for an entire week. They had to literally bring my food to me because I wasn't able to go to the crew mess and get my own food. I watched so many Disney movies. It's unbelievable. It was so bad. It was so bad. Finally, they send me for an MRI in St. Thomas. And at this point, I had been signed off of work for so long that my manager was basically like, hey, even if nothing's wrong with your foot, when you get this MRI, like you're probably going to get sent home anyway. And I was like, cool, please get me off the ship. I need to leave.
Yeah. At that point, especially.
So they send me for an MRI in St. Thomas and my foot is fractured.
Yeah.
And I remember I went to the medical center and the mean nurse was like, what did the MRI say? And I was like, it's fractured. So then I had to go home. I had my car there in the port because I was smart and had my wonderful fiance at the time drive down my car for me and for me to be able to use it when we were in port.
Yeah.
But I was like, I can't drive back to North Carolina. I have a broken foot.
Yeah.
So our good friend Bobby, he picked me up with another one of his friends and drove my car to Orlando. Then my mom flew down and drove home with me. So now I'm back in North Carolina. And I'm like, now what am I doing with my life? But first I was like, I have a broken foot. Disney Cruise Line still has to pay me because I broke my foot on their ship. I said, I'm not going to try to find a job. Because at this point I was like, I'm not going back. I like knew it. I was like, yeah, that's not happening. So I was like, let me just take a 3-month vacation. So I spent a month at home and then went and lived in Canada for 2 months with Julian. We go to Disneyland for a weekend.
Yay.
My favorite Disneyland trips in the world. Saw Fairy Godmother while I was there, and Fairy Godmother literally made me cry like a baby because that's the effect she has on me. And she said something like, she didn't even know like my situation. And she was just like, I can just tell you're like a really magical person. And I'm literally sitting there like crying. And I'm like, it's a sign from Fairy Godmother. So then We get back to Canada. At the end of that trip, I don't remember who asked me, but they were like, do you think you'll go back to cruise line? And I said, I think I'll go back if they offer me a shorter contract on a different ship. Now, I had a 6-month contract on the Fantasy. Merchandise boutique contracts on cruise line tend to be 6 months. Like, they don't really do anything shorter. The next day, we are home from Disneyland, and I get an email from Disney Cruise Line offering me a 3-month contract on the Dream. And I was like, I manifested this yesterday. I was like, this is it. Y'all want to know how long my actual Disney Cruise Line contract lasted?
How long?
It lasted 4 days.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
I stepped foot on the ship and had the worst panic attack I've ever had in my life.
Yep.
And I was like, I couldn't even go to work that night. I was like, I can't do it. And I remember I like called my mom. I called Julie. My mom was like, are you sure? Because basically, you know, when you quit Disney Cruise Line, you have to give them a 30-day notice.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, I can't stay on the ship for a month.
That's a long time.
Yeah. And HR was like, if you leave now, you can never work for the Walt Disney Company ever again.
Oh my God.
And I was like, that sounds terrifying, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I have never been so proud of myself because I said, my mental health needs to come first in this situation.
Mm-hmm.
And I got on that ship on a Friday. I didn't eat anything the entire weekend but gingerbread cookies.
No.
It's very on brand for you.
Is it like she was just sitting there eating them, like, and her brand was just like coursing through her?
Well, that was because on Halloween, Jess and I had went to Magic Kingdom dressed in Christmas costumes, and we had gingerbread cookies that we bought at the drugstore. And that was the only food I had on the ship with me, and I didn't want to go to the crew mess. So I literally ate nothing but gingerbread cookies for an entire weekend.
We'll link the video in the show notes if you want to watch it, because we made a vlog.
I want to watch it.
Video. You'll see the gingerbread cookies featured that I ate in a weekend.
Mm-hmm.
So got on the ship on a Friday, got off on Monday, and drove straight home to North Carolina. And now I'm like, well, now what do I do? So call the hotel I used to work at, and I'm like, are you guys hiring me? Because I was still a good employee. I left on good terms. I still talked to the managers all the time. I got my old front desk job back, but at a different hotel in our complex because our owners owned like multiple hotels.
Okay.
So like then the hotel I had used to work at had this event coordinator position open. And I kept looking at it and I was like, I could do that job. But I was like, I just started working as a front desk agent now, and you have to wait so many months to transfer within the company. And I was like, what do I do? So I talked to HR and I say, can I apply for this? And they gave me permission to go ahead and apply for it. And then I got the job. I was finally working as an event coordinator. Yay. So remember years ago where I said, I'm going to start as front desk and then move into being an event coordinator? I did it. Mm-hmm. And I did that it was almost 2 years. It was up until August of 2020. So I was an event coordinator. But you can't talk about the story without talking about the pandemic.
Right.
The great pivot for all of us.
Yeah, like
the grand pivot.
So I was at a wedding in Savannah, Georgia. The wedding was March 8th.
Oh no. Dear.
Wedding was fine. We get home the next day. Julian flies back to Canada.
Uh-oh.
All of a sudden, my phone is ringing off the hook at work. People are canceling everything. They're moving things. And I was like, oh, this is worse than anyone thought it was.
Yeah.
And it was really scary because then Marriott announced they were doing furloughs. And I was like, am I even going to have a job? Then they announced the Canadian border was closing, which is like a whole other thing. And I was like, great. I was like, well, this is it. Everything I had planned is falling to pieces, but that's life, unfortunately. And what they did at the hotel was they did not furlough me though, is since I had worked in multiple departments and they knew that I could be easily trained in other departments, they kept me on. So I was working front desk. I was still doing event stuff. I was doing housekeeping stuff sometimes. I learned how to do accounting stuff. I was doing all of these extra things, wasn't getting paid extra for it, of course. Was only working like 2 days a week. Yeah. And also I was miserable at work. I was miserable because I couldn't see my fiance because a border was closed between us. Mm-hmm. And I know we're going to get into my small business, so I won't get too much into that now. But eventually I started a small business and ended up quitting my job, which everyone was like, you're quitting your job in the middle of a pandemic? And I was like, yeah, bye. Like, see you later. I'm not sad about it at all. Tour became my full-time job. And then the rest is about Julian. And I know we're going to talk about that. We got married. I moved to Canada. And yeah, that's the story. I live in Canada now.
Yes.
That's just a quick summary, of the last 8 years.
It's so crazy though.
A lot has happened.
It's such an interesting story.
So much has happened. Like I look back on it, and I was, when you asked me to do this, I was like, I know they're going to ask for like a full summary of my life. And I kind of sat down and started reflecting on the past literally 8 years. And I was like, I feel like people do that much in their entire life.
Mm-hmm.
And I've done it in 8 years. And like, what's next?
Not only to me is it mind-boggling that like you just speak these things into being, but you just have this sort of like, just go with it. I don't know. At least that's how I'm perceiving. You're just like, okay, so this is what's happening now. Okay, so this is what's happening. Okay, like the career pivots and like living on the ship and moving to Canada. Like you're just like, all right, this is what's happening now. Okay, I'm supposed to be here right now. And I think part of the like power that you have and the way that you've been able to really like manifest these dream situations is in that, like the thing that Jess and I talk about all the time, that like just surrendering to the season that you're in and whatever it's supposed to teach you and whatever you're supposed to take from it is so difficult to do.
It is, but so hard to do.
Don't worry. Really
I've cried a lot about it. And my
mom not a bad thing.
Yeah. My mom always taught me growing up, like everything happens for a reason and you might not know that reason right when it happens. Like when I was depressed as heck and decided to move back home, I was like, why is this happening? There was a reason for it. It was because my mom was going to need brain surgery and I needed to be home for that. Like, we'll get into it, but I had to cancel my wedding and you're still trying to figure out the reason for that. But like, I know one day it'll be like, okay, this was how it was supposed to be. Like there's a path and, sometimes we try to run from the path and run in the opposite direction and be like, no, it's scary. But I think that as you move forward in life, you just kind of gotta go with it.
Yeah. When you were talking about how you would just like work extra shifts or volunteer to stay or cover for someone or whatever, I was reminded of my first year in Orlando. And I had the same situation because what people don't realize is, especially when you work for Disney in like a guest facing role, it really like requires all of the emotional capacity of your being to be that happy or to be that present. And especially when you're working with kids or you're performing or something, I just remember being like, this is an escape. I can just go do this.
You almost don't have time to be sad.
You don't.
Like, I don't have the time to be sad. I don't have time to cry.
Yeah.
I have to put on a smile and pretend I have a magic wand. Like,
and I think that's part of what makes it so difficult to get off the clock. And I think that's a huge part of it is you don't realize until like you clock out, you're like, oh, it's such a paradigm shift that it almost like, I think in some cases it's a gaping hole in Disney's ability to understand the roles that these cast members are playing and what it is inadvertently doing to their mental health, because it's not natural to be that happy and up here all the time.
It's not.
Especially when you're faking it. So when you have to kind of like do that rise and fall, like the lows seem way lower than they normally would.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. It seems like it's like the darkest time ever. And I was like, I literally was like, what is wrong with me?
Yeah.
I was like, something's got to be wrong with
normal.
me.
I thought the same thing though. I was like, I can't be me. I don't want to be me. Like anytime I was just like sitting in my apartment, I was like, I have to go do something or be someone. I can't just
I want to go
here.
be Fairy Godmother Taylor. She's much more fun than depressed Taylor who's sitting in a 10 by 10 crew cabin and hates all the food. Like
and hates all there are not enough gingerbread cookies on this ship.
No, that's why I brought them with me the second time. Like, ate them all.
It's interesting to untangle all of that after leaving and like getting back in touch with yourself and having to just sit with those uncomfortable emotions and acknowledge it. And it's interesting to watch yourself move through those seasons and watch your mental health fluctuate. And that's a journey within itself. So
mental health is wealth, guys.
That's what I've learned in our time there. It's like always prioritize your mental health first, even when people don't understand.
Hard.
Yeah, you'll have people like you did on the ship who are like, you have no reason to be sad. And like, that is number one, incredibly invalidating, but number two, not true because they don't know your experience. So
no, they're like, and then of course they'll be like, well, this happened to me and you don't see me crying about it. And I'm like, okay, well, great for you. I handle my emotions differently and I feel the need that I need to cry about this. So I'm gonna cry about it.
We need to like normalize crying.
I probably cried yesterday just because I thought my dog was cute. Like it's a normal occurrence.
But I think crying is really, I always say, I'm like, crying is a movement of energy. Like it gets,
it
like,
gets it out.
Yeah. And
it's nothing worse than like keeping those emotions pent up and trying to pretend like everything's fine.
Question
now
two.
Now we're on question two after how many minutes? It's fine.
Do you think we covered question two? Like, or
I kind of think I was going to say, just for the sake of posterity, we were going to ask you how you knew that it was time to transition from season to season. But I think what we've realized
you just don't know, you just do it and all of a sudden you're in a new season of life. Like it's,
but I think your instincts, and like again, like observing third party here, I think your instincts are like way better than you're giving yourself credit for. That is something that you have a lot of, you know, like when you had to move back home and you were so miserable in Orlando and then you moved back home and then your mom needed you there and you were like, oh, well, this is why I'm here. Like some people wouldn't figure that out right away. Would probably like, oh, it's a good thing I'm here because now this is happening. They wouldn't have had the wisdom to like, understand
this happened for a reason.
Yes, exactly.
Like, everything happens for a reason. Sometimes that reason is not black and white. Sometimes, you know, you get the yellow stoplight being like, you gotta wait to find out, but it eventually makes sense.
Talking about that knowing and that instinct, our next question is going to be all about Julian, which I think is a huge aspect of you following your instincts from day one, which I was there
literally from day one.
So, you know, this is going to be another story. This is like story time with Taylor, basically. And
literally, welcome to Enchanted Tales with Taylor.
It's the 10-minute all too well.
This is literally the 10-minute all too well version. Only it's like an hour of me talking about how my life is a literal roller coaster.
Everyone's is though. Like hearing stories like these are so inspiring for people because everyone's life is a roller coaster at some season or another.
Yeah. And I think this is really why we thought of you for this incredible women doing extraordinary things topic, because it is incredible to be able to jump into this wave or this roller coaster of all these different seasons. And it is like, it's just extraordinary, like to see how it all unfolds and connects. And I think that's where the real beauty of life is, to look back on it and be like, wow, this was all intertwined. It's like a tapestry of your life coming together. And it's so fun to hear it all consecutively. So anyways, why don't we talk about Julian? Because this was a fun season of life of you guys getting together. And now it's
still a fun season of life.
It's a great season. Taylor and Julian, I think, are one of my favorite couples ever. And they are really inspiring, and we're going to get into this, but they obviously did the long distance from US to Canada. And I was living with Taylor at the time when she met Julian, and she came home and I knew something was super different. And I know that's cliche to say, but she was I know.
Hold on.
We love Taylor and Julian. And I think that these few questions are going to be really insightful for anyone who is in a relationship, wants to be in a relationship, has dealt with or is going to deal with long distance, international relationship, anything. Like your guys' story is just really interesting. So how did you and Julian meet, and what has your life looked like since then, Taylor?
So buckle up, we're in for another long one. So I met Julian in June of 2016. We both worked in the same department at Disney, and
you can say entertainment.
We can say entertainment. Okay. Yeah. I don't want to like give too much away. We were scheduled a shift together. All I'm going to say is sometimes in entertainment, you work with pairs. And that particular shift, Julian and I were paired up together. Might have involved a dance party in Tomorrowland. I don't know. Read into that if you must.
You could give a clue, maybe,
Like,
was it a really incredible dance party?
It was so incredible. I love Helen and Bob. They're, set us up on a blind date one time. It was great. Anyway, so walked into work one night. I was scheduled with Julian and we just really hit it off. The shift we were working, you would, work for a little bit and then have a little bit of time off together and then work for a little bit and have a little bit of time off together. If you work in entertainment, you know exactly what I mean. But we just really hit it off in between the breaks. And I was like, kind of like this guy. Like, but of course I'm like, but he's Canadian. Like, how I was like, this isn't going to go anywhere. Next day, he asked me out on our first date. We went to Disney Springs. We went to Jock Lindsay's. And then I think we went to Splitsville after that. And I came home from that first date and I looked at Jess and I said, I'm going to move to Canada one day.
What?
Get this though. This is the part of the story that I didn't find out till years later. Julian went home to his roommate and said, I'm going to marry this girl the same night.
That's so cute.
Right? Insane. So of course, we start hanging out literally every single day. He's at our house all the time. I lived with Jess at the time. I'm sure she was so sick of Julian.
I'm sure she was not.
You know what? And I will say that Julian is one of those people that like, he doesn't make anyone feel left out. He is like the type of person that like, if it's me and him and someone else, they don't feel like a third wheel. Like they never do. And that's one of the many things that I love about him. But, we started going on dates, but we were kind of like, what are we going to do at the end of the summer? And I remember like a few days into knowing each other, we had a conversation about it. And we were like, let's just have fun, nothing serious. And turns to find out both of us were totally lying. We were both totally into each other.
I love that.
Yeah. So we're dating. He tells me he loves me like in like a month into us dating. And I'm like, I want to marry this boy. I was like, I'm going to move to Canada tomorrow at this point. Like, how do I do this? The end of the summer comes and now he was an ICP. So he was on an international college program, but he was on one of their summer programs. So it was only 3 months long, meaning between the time I met Julian and the time he left was 2 months. And yeah. And, me and one of my really good friends had the 3 rules of dating in Disney. Number 1, don't bite the hand that feeds you. So don't date someone in your apartment. Number 2, always say no to entertainment boys.
Yes.
And number 3,
where were these rules? Where nobody told me about these rules.
The 3rd rule was, I don't remember exactly how it was worded, but don't date international boys because at the end of the summer you'll be crying into your ice cream.
Yeah.
I literally broke all 3 rules like simultaneously. I did that. And apparently that's the hack, is you just have to break all of them at once.
Oh, okay. It's like, it cancels it out.
Yeah, it cancels it out apparently. I don't know, it worked out. But we get to the end of the summer. His program ends. He's supposed to still be in Orlando for another like week and a half. And then on the day his program ends, I'm gonna try not to cry talking about this, his grandmother passes away. It was so tough because our relationship was still so new. And I was like trying to comfort him, but then I was also really sad because I was like, he's not going to stay for another week now. And sure enough, he left the very next day. So I didn't even have time to process the emotion. Yeah. I lived with Jess at the time. So she saw this whole thing roll out. And I was just like, I had never felt so heartbroken in my life. And, obviously we had known like, we're going to stay together. Like we're going to make long distance work. Like we were so determined, but it was so hard. And in fact, I remember taking him to the airport and then I immediately got in my car, called out of all my shifts for like a week and just went to see my family, like in North Carolina and Pennsylvania. Cause I was like, I just need to go. Then like 3 weeks later, he came down and visited for a week. And then I went to Canada for the first time. And then I am very lucky because I feel like a lot of people in long distance relationships sometimes, struggle with the whole scheduling to see each other thing. And I just never felt like that was a problem for us. And for being a quote unquote international relationship, we saw each other so much, so incredibly much. So fast forward a little bit to October 2017, I get hit by a school bus.
I'm sorry, what?
Kristen, do you not know this story? I love how I just casually said this. I was driving to my work.
Neither does anyone listening.
That's the highlight. I was driving to work one morning and a school bus stopped in front of me, and I stopped behind it because that's what you're supposed to do when a school bus stops. And the school bus literally backed into me and like crushed the entire front of my car.
Okay, so you were in your car. Okay.
I was in my car. I didn't like get high. Don't worry. Wasn't a Regina George moment.
Yeah, I was like picturing a Regina George situation, and I'm like, who? What?
Yeah, apparently they really, the school district really hated me after that. But anyway, I have one of the worst weeks of my life that week. I got hit by the school bus. My car was totaled. I think I got passed up for a promotion at work that week too. Yeah, I did. That happened that week. And I was just like, this week is the worst week of my life. And there's my mom going, don't worry, it'll all get better.
I love it.
And I'm like, no, it's not. My mom is the most wonderful woman on the entire planet. I was going to Canada that weekend, flew into Canada Friday night that week. First of all, I thankfully had no injuries from the car accident, but like my back was just in a lot of pain. So I had to sit on a plane while being in pain. That rhymed. The next morning, Julian's like, hey, we're going to get up and take photos. And I was like, I'm tired. I don't want to. That was just like my puppy voice. Took me to the Biosphere here in Montreal, which was actually when Montreal hosted the World's Fair here. It was the American Pavilion.
Oh.
I also like to refer to it as fake Epcot because it does look like Spaceship Earth. In fact, it was I'm pretty sure it's like the inspiration for the shape of Spaceship Earth. Like that's an actual thing. He takes me there. We're going in and everyone's speaking French because we live in Quebec. I don't know what's going on. I don't realize we're in this place before it even opens. He takes me up to the top and he's like, look at all the pretty trees. And I'm like totally oblivious because that's how I live my life. And he proposed. Of course I said yes right away. There was no question. In fact, my answer was yes, 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 yes. After many, are you joking? Is this a joke? Because I couldn't believe it. I was like, what? I'm gonna get married? Also, my favorite thing is that, most people say, will you marry me? Julian said, do you want to marry me? And I always just, for some reason, I always think that that's so funny.
That's sweet though, because it's like asking you.
It's putting the power in your hands more.
Keep in mind his first language is also French. So it could have been like a language thing. Yeah. So get engaged. I was like over the moon. I was like, this is the best week ever. And I was like, even though my car is totaled and I don't have a vehicle right now, we decide on a long engagement just because it made more sense for us. And I also absolutely hate this whole concept of like, when you get engaged, you should get married in like a year. Like, no, there's no timeline for things. Everyone has their own timeline. Stop telling people that they need to have year-long engagement. Stop telling people they have to get engaged after a year of dating. Like, stop it. Like, the universe just needs to stop.
Thank you.
Perfectly fine to just do things on your own time. I have gotten so many questions over the year being like, why is your engagement so long? And I'm like, because it is. I don't have to explain it.
I got stuff to do.
Right? Julian was also finishing school, and we also knew we wanted to have this big magical Christmas wedding. We wanted to be able to afford that big Christmas wedding. So we had a 3-year engagement, which we got engaged on October 28th, 2017. Our wedding was supposed to be December 5th, 2020. So it's like just over 3 years. Now, December 5th, 2020, clearly did not work out the way it was supposed to because a little thing called coronavirus. And we spent the next few years visiting each other constantly. I've had some of the best times of my life with him, but come to 2020, the border closes. And I will tell you, there is nothing worse than being with someone and literally just not being able to see them, even if you have all the power in the world to be able to go see them, even if you have the finances, you have the time, and you just can't go. You are just not allowed to. It was the hardest thing I've ever been to. And every single month it would get extended by 30 days. And every single month I would be like, it's another 30 days. I can't see Julian now. And I don't wish that upon my worst enemy. Mm-hmm. It is the hardest thing I've ever had to do in my life. I'm trying not to cry, talk about it. I'm really blessed that I do have such a wonderful partner in life that like, sometimes I look back and I'm like, how the heck did we make it through that? But if you can make it through that, you can make it through literally anything. Like that was, we've had so many challenges thrown at us to begin with, being, an international couple. Like that in itself is not easy. And then to not be able to see your partner, your best friend for it was 7.5 months I went without seeing him. And I didn't know for most of that 7.5 months when I would see him.
There was no deadline.
There was no like, hey, the border's
Yeah.
still not fully open now. And we're now in November of 2021. So it's been a while. And the other problem was at the time, Canadians could still fly into the US. I don't know why there was like that loophole. However, Julian got furloughed from his job. He was trying to find a new job. We were like, it's not really safe for him to fly internationally right now anyway. And I was like, I don't want you to like come here and then have to go back to Canada and quarantine and like miss out on a job opportunity because of that.
Right.
Like, I was like, that's, you know, as much as I want to see you, like at the same time, if you need to go interview for a job, you need to go interview for a job.
Right.
He finally gets offered a job, which she still has, and it is a wonderful job. And, you know, I was like, okay, what can we do? And at this point, it was like September of 2020. We had made the decision to postpone the wedding, canceled our honeymoon, because we were like, the wedding's 3 months away. It's, you know, it's not even just like, oh, we don't think we'll be able to have it. Like, we have people traveling from Canada to the US for this wedding. Like, there were so many factors that we were like, there's too many what ifs. We decided to postpone the wedding for an entire year. Keep in mind, an entire year. But we hadn't seen each other for 7 months. And so I'm like, I don't want to wait to marry you another year. Like, that was not a thing. So we planned a little secret wedding. Didn't tell anyone about it except for like our closest friends and family. They actually lifted it so that those who were like, they called it extended family members, could travel across the border. So I was like, technically, I was then allowed to travel to Canada as like a long-term girlfriend, fiance. But I was like, we were like, we just want to get married. So Julian got permission from work to have off for an entire week and was told that when you come back to Canada, because we have to quarantine for 2 weeks when you come back to Canada, like, no worries, like, it's not going to be an issue. Plus he worked from home anyway. So he flies down to the US and we literally got married in my neighborhood's gazebo with like less than 10 people there. My mom, my dad, my sister, his godparents, and like a photographer was there. That was it. That was all that was at our wedding. And then we had a Zoom call where like his parents were on the Zoom call. They weren't even there in person, which is like the thing that kills me the most about the fact that like we're not having a wedding anymore now. And I'll get into that. And we got married, had a Zoom call. Jess was there. She caught me giving the peace sign during the ceremony. I was very awkward. I was like, how do you be a bride?
It was so you though. It was so authentic.
It was so me. It was very like, it was not the wedding I planned. Because as someone who went to school to be an event coordinator, I spent my whole life dreaming of this wedding.
That is ironic.
Yeah, isn't life? And then 3 days later, I literally had to move to Canada in a few suitcases, which is very hard to begin with, let alone when you literally own your own small business. I moved here November 1st of last year. So I've lived here for just over a year now. Wow. I know. And since then, we've unfortunately had to cancel our 2021 December wedding because the border is open now for fully vaccinated, but we were like, people are they even going to want to come? Like, is Julian's Canadian family even going to want to come with like all of this COVID testing and stuff that you have to do to cross the border? And we have a house. We own an 110-year-old cottage. It's very old, but very cute. We got a puppy. I have a little golden doodle puppy named Bruno now. And yeah, I'm a permanent resident in Canada now. That happened. And it's like, you know, after being separated for so long and having so many challenges thrown at my relationship, you know, whether it was when I was on Disney Cruise Line and like I had to pay for Wi-Fi to talk to him, and you know, the border being closed for 7 months and then our weddings being canceled, it finally feels like, hey, like you're getting your happily ever after. Like, this is your moment that you've always dreamed of. And when I was a little girl and I dreamed of Prince Charming, did I imagine I'd move to Canada? No, but it's a dream come true. And it's thanks to my wonderful husband, because he's a husband now, which is still weird to say that. It's been a year. But yeah, that's kind of the summary, I guess, of Julian. I could go into a lot more, but...
It's such a great story. And I mean, the hard parts are painful. Like, I feel the emotion when you're talking about it, but the overarching theme is that you guys are just so genuinely dedicated to one another. And you're both such good-hearted people that it just, you're very aligned to one another and it shows. And I'm beyond happy for you. Like every time I saw you guys were reunited after a long distance spell, I was like celebrating. I'm like, thank God they're together.
I literally picked you up from the airport last year. And I immediately went home and popped champagne. I was like, woohoo, no more distance.
No
because
more.
at that point I was going to be getting married. There's finally no more long distance.
Yeah.
After doing long distance for 4 years. And that's a long time to do long distance.
That is
Long
such a long time,
You
especially
guys-
like international distance.
Obviously, Canada's not that hard to travel to from the US, but like you do have to go
Well,
through
it is
customs.
now.
Now it is, but before
Yeah.
you have to go through customs, and like I ended up getting a Nexus card, so like it's super easy. Like I was like, it's like traveling to New York. Like it was so easy. Like the flight's not even that long, but yeah, the pandemic just really put a wrench in a whole lot of my plans. And this is why I've learned in life, things just happen for a reason, and don't make plans for yourself because life will make them for you.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I didn't manifest a canceled wedding. I can tell you that.
No, but I mean, I think you'll do something someday that will get to fulfill your Christmas wedding dreams of some capacity.
We 100% have plans to do a vow renewal eventually. I was like, let's not even pick a year. Let's not until it's like 100% not going to be a problem, because I was like, and that's why a lot of people ask me like, why didn't you just postpone again? And I was like, you have no idea the heartbreak I had to go through to postpone it the first time. I said at this point, I kind of just needed to cancel it and be done with it and like close that chapter and say like, hey, this isn't going to happen, but like, it's going to be okay. Which obviously I cried about it for literally weeks and weeks and weeks and drank a lot of wine.
Well,
yeah, but that's okay. And, you know, I didn't get to wear my wedding dress that I had initially picked out, but I have plans for that wedding dress still. Like it's not totally lost. There will be photos in it eventually, because there was no way that I'm not having that moment. Because we have photos from like our small ceremony, but like we don't have a lot. And like I was wearing like $100 dress from Lulu's. Like it wasn't
pretty though.
It was pretty. There's just a lot of things that I was like, had I known this was going to be it, I would have done things differently. But there's no way of knowing that, because as much as I like to manifest, you cannot predict the future.
Right.
It's true.
It's true. Wow. Well, I'm excited to see how life continues to unfold for you guys. And I mean, you'll never forget any of this. And it's definitely unique to you. I guess that's like the one part about it. Like it's your story. But anyways, so
we've definitely talked about the fact that long distance relationships suck. And I personally have never actually been in a long distance relationship. And I know Jess has, and obviously you did it for a really long time. So give us the good, the bad, the reality, your whole perspective on long distance relationships. And because you did it for so long, I think it would be really helpful for everyone to know kind of what you found that worked for you in that time.
So, you know, a lot of people will find out that you have a long distance relationship and immediately they're like, that's not going to work. To those people, I tell them to shut up, because I am proof that it works out. It does. But there's a lot of good. For instance, you know, and I know Jess can relate to this. Like, you know, you create countdowns to see that person and then you see them and it's like the most wonderful thing in the world. But the parallel to that is saying goodbye. It feels like the world is crumbling to pieces every single time. I cannot tell you how many times I have cried in an airport. Like I think that's why I just cry so much now, because I'm like, oh, I spent so many years just crying in airports, like specifically. But, you know, there's a lot of good though. Like Julian and I were very good about when we would spend our time together. Like he would take time off of work when I was here. I would try to take time off of work when he was there. Like we would definitely try to devote that entire time to each other.
Yeah.
Rather than, and there was times where obviously like we couldn't get out of work, or, you know, he had to go to class, like those things happen, but we really did try our best to devote all of the time we would spend together with each other. So it wouldn't be me coming to visit him in Canada and then him being gone for 8 hours a day. It would be me coming to visit him and we would have all of these fun things planned to do together. But at the same time, sometimes we would just sit on the couch and watch movies, and doing stuff like that made it feel like such a normal relationship, because I feel like people would be like, oh, you're going on vacation to Canada. And I'm like, it's not a vacation. I'm sit in his apartment and we're snuggle with his dog and we're going to watch movies. And it makes the relationship feel so normal. And like, it doesn't feel like I have to go on vacation. It makes I'm just have a longer commute to see my significant other. But I will say it's not easy. And surprisingly, so many people have reached out to me. They're like, do you have any advice for a long distance relationship? And I'm like, I'm so glad people reach out to me for this. And it honestly makes me feel really great because I feel like, you know, Julian and I have definitely figured it out. I mean, by all means, couldn't wait for us to be over. Couldn't wait for that moment to be, no. But, you know, one of the biggest things is like communication. When you're seeing your partner all the time, you can give them like physical cues. When you are in a long distance relationship, you have to learn how to use words to communicate. Yeah. You have no other choice. If I'm annoyed with you, I have to physically tell you that I am annoyed and tell you why, because you might not know what you did, because it might have been something you did a few hours ago, but then you got busy at work and it gets broken up. So you have to learn how to use your words. And I almost think that every relationship should have to go long distance for like maybe a month, because it teaches you so much about communicating your feelings. Like Julian and I have this wonderful love story fairy tale, but we have those moments where we, you know, still have arguments, but I'm very much able to say like, hey, this upset me. And that's not something I would have been able to do 5 years ago. And another big thing with long distance is I feel like it's so important to like always know, like, when am I going to see you next? When I say goodbye to you this time, I want to know when I'm going to see you next, because it gives me something to get excited for. That's why the pandemic was so hard, was because it was like, okay, I don't know now. Like, I know I'm going to see you as soon as I can, but I don't know now. I think the good parts are when you are together and you see that person after, you know, weeks or months or however long it was. But the bad is just, you know, when you are laying in bed at night and you're like, I miss him. And it's really hard to just constantly miss someone. Yeah. Like, thank God we live in the age of FaceTime, because I don't know what I would have done had FaceTime not exist. But, you know, it's really hard because sometimes you come home from work and you're really sad because, you know, you miss your significant other and you had a bad day at work, but they're not there because they're in another country. And that's really hard to do. And it's hard, but it works. Like, you just have to figure out what works for you. Not everything works for everyone. Not every long distance relationship is built to last. But I think because Julian and I had such like an understanding, like right from the beginning, like, hey, this is it. We really found every single way to make it work. We were like, we're not going to let this fail. We're not going to let this become a situation where we don't know how to make it work. Mm-hmm. And I think that's super important, is to be on the same level with your partner. And once again, it comes to that whole communication thing. Also, trust. Trust is so important. My previous relationship that was super toxic, that was long distance for a little bit. There was no level of trust there. There was no level of communication there, which it makes me so proud of myself that I literally was even willing to go into another long distance relationship. But it ended up being the best thing I've ever done in my life. I wouldn't have everything I had now had that not happened.
You know, the willingness to take a risk can't be based on an experience with somebody else in the past, because then it's sort of, if you had chosen that, it would have sort of been like, you know, if I were Julian, I would think like, well, I'm not that guy, you know, like.
And I am one to brag about my significant other. And I feel like people get so annoyed. I'm like, you don't understand though. Julian is just, I don't even know. He's just so, I don't want to say the word perfect, because people can be like, you're so cheesy, but like, anyone who has met Julian will be like, he is genuinely just one of the most wonderful people on the planet. It's probably because he's Canadian. They're also nice, stereotypical Canadian, but just, I could not ask for a better partner in life. Like, could not ask for a better one. There's not a single thing that I'd be like, oh, other than him like picking up his dishes, which that's like the one complaint.
We all have flaws. We're all human, you know?
Takes out the trash though, so it's fine.
Well, continuing on this topic from another perspective, can you give us a little insight on what it was like and what the process was moving to Canada?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So first of all, moving to another country is hard to begin with. It's not easy. Doing it in a pandemic, though, it's not a fun time.
Laughable.
Yeah. So obviously, like, I got here last year on November 1st. I literally had to prove that I was married to Julian to be allowed in Canada at that time. And immediately we did hire an immigration lawyer, and anyone who is planning on immigrating to another country, hire an immigration lawyer. It's pricey, but it is the best thing we ever did because they know what they're doing. They walk you through step by step. Let me tell you though, it is a lot of steps and a lot of things we were like, seriously, like we have to do that. So because I'm married, I was able to apply for permanent residency here. And there's two different ways you can apply for permanent residency. You can apply from like outside of Canada or inside of Canada. Basically, that just means like, hey, I'm living here or I'm actually living in the States and waiting to come in. I obviously applied from inside of Canada, but they ask you for so many things.
I had sent a letter to the Canadian government explaining how I knew that Taylor and Julian were meant for each other and, you know, to give witness to let
her into the country.
And basically, because you have to prove that your relationship is legitimate. And she had to write a letter for me, basically saying like, hey, their relationship's real. We had several family and friends write them. Julian's friends wrote letters. And honestly, most of them made me cry. I also had to write a letter myself, which was so challenging to do without like literally like breaking my computer from tears streaming down my face. Like I thought I was going to short circuit the keyboard. We had to submit photos of ourselves together, which let me tell you,
so wild.
You have to submit photos, but for me that wasn't a problem. He was like, we need at least 20 photos, and I was like,
you got it.
I only want 20 because I have 2,000, which more than that.
I would have sent all of them. I would have just been like, select all. Done.
Right, it was so hard.
Enjoy.
We like purposely like tried to pick photos that were like, you know, from big events. Like he went to my sister's college graduation, stuff like that, because it really kind of proves like, oh, he is a part of your life. It's not just you with him. We also had to make a list of every single time we had ever seen each other.
Wow. That's a lot of work.
Yeah. And it was funny because we gave all this information to our lawyer and he goes through it. And he told us it took him longer to go through ours because most of his couples don't see each other as much as Julian and I saw each other. Because up until the pandemic, we were seeing each other like every other month. Mm-hmm. Even I would go to New Jersey to visit my family there and he would like drive down from Canada. Like it was just so easy for us. We had to submit like all of that to Canada. Now, because we live in Quebec, Quebec has a bunch of their own laws. So you also have to submit to Quebec and say like, hey, I want to move here. I'm very fortunate because if you try to immigrate to Quebec for any other reason, you have to take a French test. Because I'm married, I do not have to take a French test.
Oh, geez.
Goodness. I do speak like very little French. I can read a menu. My dog only understands French commands, so that's fun. Funny. He's bilingual. He's a bilingual dog. But yeah, so we had to submit all of that. We had to submit to Quebec. And then we kind of just like don't hear anything for a while. By the time we got like everything together, it wasn't submitted until like the spring. And I had gotten here in November. So we're thinking it's going to take like a year. Because that's what we were told. We're like, it can take a very long time. But then I've had to have my fingerprints taken more times than I can count because I had to have an FBI background check. I had to have a Royal Canadian Mounted Police background check. I have so many fingerprints. I had to go get a medical exam where they did blood tests. They asked me like all of these background questions. And I was like, this is a lot. I'm sure there was more we had to submit. I have an entire like folder on my computer of just like all the immigration stuff we had to get together. I had to submit like every ID document that I own. So my marriage certificate, my birth certificate, my Nexus card, my driver's license, my passport. Julian had to submit all of those things as well. We had to submit like bank records. We had to submit, you know, proof of address. There's so many things we had to submit. But then a few weeks ago, it was literally 3 weeks ago, we got an email from our lawyer saying my application was approved. So yeah, I'm a permanent resident now. And that it makes it sound like it's super easy, but it's not.
No, it didn't. That does not sound easy at all. Anytime you begin with hire an immigration lawyer, that's not an easy process.
Well, and that's the thing is, the reason we did it was because we've heard stories of people, and because if you mess up one tiny little thing on your paperwork, like it could mess you up for months. Obviously, we're not like 100% done with the permanent residency process yet. We are still waiting for my actual like permanent residence card to come in the mail. I have to like sign up for my universal health care stuff still. And I'm like waiting for my Canadian social security number. Oh, really exciting stuff, you know, glamorous life up here in Canada. Yeah, it was a lot. And it was so stressful because I was like, what if Canada decides I'm not allowed in? And of course, the lawyer was like, you guys have such a solid case. You have nothing to be worried about. You're also American, which does make it a lot easier. And he also was like, and you guys just have so much proof. And he was like, you have nothing to be worried about. He's like, you all have no criminal background. And I was like, well, like, there's a lot of factors. He was like, you have such a solid case. Don't be worried. And I was like, I'm still going to be worried about it. But, you know, that was the biggest, like, when we got that email, I cried. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm Canadian now. I mean, I'm not actually Canadian, but I'm Canadian now. I'm an honorary Canadian.
You totally are.
You're a Canadian.
Canadian.
Oh my
American.
God, your kids are going to be Canadian. That's so cute.
I know. They're going to be so cute. My little cute.
Oh my God, they're going to be bilingual too.
I know. And it's going to be really funny because they're probably going to know more French than me. And then they're probably going to like talk about me in front of me and I won't know. That's.
You have to learn French while you're
I'm
pregnant.
trying. It's a really hard language. It is. It's a very hard language. It's not easy, especially growing up learning English. And then you go into a language that has gendered pronouns and all of that stuff. It is so hard because I actually tried to take French when I was in middle school and almost failed. So I switched to Spanish when I was in high school.
Oh no.
And then I was like, joke's on me. I probably should have. I never thought I was going to need French.
Right.
Plus, it's actually two different dialects of French completely anyway.
I was going to say it's different, right?
It's
French,
different.
Canadian. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's been, like I said, it's been a wild year.
Jeez. I'll say.
I'm Canadian now.
Yay.
So, as an American living in Canada, what are the biggest differences you've noticed between living in Canada now for a little over a year and living in the US? Are there things you miss from the States? And are there things that Canada just does better than the US? I know that there are, but I would love to hear what they are. Other than people being nicer.
My biggest difference, like my actual biggest difference, only applies to Quebec, and that is the language. So the primary language here is French. My husband's first language is French. His whole family speaks French. Most places you go, they do understand English. So it's like not really a problem. Like as soon as I greet them and say hello, they kind of understand like, oh, she speaks English, and they'll switch. But that's really the biggest difference for me. Obviously, if I were to go to any other province, that would not be the case. If I'm in Ontario or, you know, a few weeks ago, we were in Vancouver, not the case at all. But for me, the biggest difference is obviously the French. That's as simple as it can be. You know, they always say that Montreal specifically also feels very European. So if you can't afford to go on a European vacation, go to Montreal, especially like if you go to the old port. But one of my favorite differences that we can talk about is when they celebrate Thanksgiving. So they celebrate Thanksgiving in the beginning of October, meaning all of those people that try to tell you to wait until after Thanksgiving to celebrate Christmas. Yeah. Well, it was at the beginning of October. So we're good to celebrate Christmas like before Halloween. It's like I was meant to move to Canada.
Honestly,
it all worked out.
But there are things that I miss about the States, obviously. Obviously, I miss my family. You know, that's the biggest one. I miss my parents' dog, Willow. Like, of course, I miss the dog. You know, she's so sweet. But like, I miss Target. Like something as simple as that.
No.
Like I miss being able to go on like a Target run. I miss Chipotle. There is Chipotle in certain parts of Canada. We just don't have them in Quebec. And that's the case with a lot of restaurants that are American. They're not in Quebec because in order to be in Quebec, they have to have a fully translated menu to French. And they have to do marketing in French. And, you know, there's laws like that they have to follow to be in Quebec. They've got a lot of different rules. We were literally in Vancouver. Like
I want Chipotle.
And Vancouver had a Chipotle. And I was like, why do they get to have one?
Yeah.
That's like very basic. I also miss like very random little things like going to Sonic and getting a Coca-Cola because they have very good ice. Like that's so niche and specific, but like that is something that I miss doing when I was back home. Obviously there's so many different stores here, and there's a lot of things that Canada has that and Quebec has that, you know, US doesn't have. We have poutine, you know, we got the good maple syrup.
True.
We have a lot of snow, which I lived in North Carolina for 4 years before I moved here, so we didn't get a lot of that. My backyard literally looked like a winter wonderland the other day. I was like, this is not real.
Aww.
Like it looked like I was like on the top of Mount Crumpet in Whoville, like with the trees covered in snow, and I was like, this is my dream come true. Snow is cold, but I do love snow, so I was very excited about that. There's, like I said, and I'm sure now that I actually like live here, not that I didn't live here before, but now that I'm an actual permanent resident, I will find those other big differences. Like we do have universal healthcare, which I cannot wait to take advantage of. Like things like that. But yeah, biggest difference for me is the French. And
yeah, I was like, is she going to mention universal healthcare?
I mean, I haven't gotten to take advantage of it yet, but I will
Right.
say that, like, you know, even just being with Julian the past 4 years, like I would go to the doctor and then tell him my doctor bill cost, and he'd be like, that's ridiculous. And it's so funny because he just like, and I was like, well, that's normal. And he's like, no, it's not. Now I understand a lot more, where like our most expensive medical bills are like our dogs.
Yeah.
That's a good problem to have then.
I
That
know.
insurance is a thing.
I tried to convince Julian to get it, and we haven't, but we might get it for him just because he's my
Totally
baby.
You totally should. I spend so much time telling people to get pet insurance, not because I sell it, because I don't, but because I'm usually dealing with people on the other side of, oh shoot, I don't have it, and now this bill is $10,000.
Right.
Don't say it and warn you.
I will say though that like his vet bills so far have been less expensive than
Yeah.
they would if we were in the US.
That's awesome.
That's my most expensive medical bill. I'll take it.
Right.
Cheers.
All right. So for our last couple questions, we do really want to make sure we talk about Gingerbread Couture, your small business. If you
Somehow
guys,
we've made it this far without mentioning it.
I know. Well,
'Cause it
if
was
you
like, we'll get to it. We'll get to it.
it's the grand finale. Well, if you
Yes.
guys follow me on social media, you know I post about Gingerbread Couture all of the time. And we just want to do a little spotlight on it because it's kind of your pandemic baby, and it's now turned into, you know, your whole business. And it's incredible what you've done with it. So let's talk about this pivot that you took, and how did Gingerbread Couture come about, and like what was your original inspiration for it?
I think in order to understand Gingerbread Couture, you got to rewind back to 2013 again. Don't worry, I'm not going to do that again.
We need to talk about
I
real
did-
life Disney also.
We need to talk about real life Disney. I feel like it's a shame to not bring her up. She's an icon. She is, you know, somewhere she's lying in the Haunted Mansion graveyard with her selfie stick and Twigga. Like she's there. It's
She's with
fine.
Disney from.
Yeah.
And Princess Jess.
Princess Jess.
So for everyone
R.I.P.
listening, these were our Instagram handles in 2013. You probably are like, what are you talking about? In 2013, Instagram was new. So we all kind of had our own little niche brands, and Taylor's real life Disney was literally, you had a
It was
selfie
brand.
stick, a stuffed
still haven't
giraffe
made it a
named
brand.
Twigga. Yeah. And, you know, we connected during those days. So they live on eternally in our hearts. So
Honestly, why is Instagram not still like that?
I don't know. It makes me sad.
I miss chronological
I miss
It was
order,
such a simple time.
simplicity.
The algorithm was so normal.
Don't get me started about the algorithm.
Oh,
Whatever.
My face actually hurts from how much I've been laughing this last
I
hour.
know.
Sorry. I'm so funny. Please cut that out. No, you're all gonna leave that in. That
We're gonna leave that
actually
in.
loved that. That was funny. Anyway.
Anyway,
back in 2013, I did have another small business. It was the time where Disney inspired bows were the hot ticket item. We all remember those days, right?
Oh, we do.
So I decided to make my own one day because I was like, why would I pay for things when I can make them myself? It's literally the story of my life and how everything happens, is why would I pay for it when I can do it myself? I have that mindset about a lot of things, and sometimes it's not good, but I was making bows. I made ears, I sold pocket tees, and I loved it. But at the time, it was just another one of those like, hey, this isn't the right timing things. I was a full-time student at UCF. I was working part-time at Disney. I was trying to have a social life, which, you know, having a social life when you live in Orlando is a lot of like, especially when you first move there, it's like, let's go spend a whole day in Disney. And you just don't have time for anything else.
yeah.
Mhm.
And to be honest with you, like a lot of people are kind of mean to me on the internet because of that, because they'd be like, oh, so you can go to Disney World, but you haven't shipped my order yet. And I was like, I'm not allowed to have a personal life.
Yeah.
Like, what? Yeah, it was. And I did it for like maybe a year and a half and ultimately decided like, hey, this isn't it right now. I swore for years, I would never reopen an Etsy shop. I would never sell anything handmade on it. My husband, who's the most supportive person in the world, was like, why aren't you doing this? Like, you love to sew. Like, I would sew him pocket t-shirts. In fact, his entire wardrobe is literally pocket t-shirts made by me. And it's the funniest thing when you open his t-shirt drawer and it's just all shirts that I've sewn for him. But he was like, why aren't you doing this? And I was like, because I don't want to. And I was so like, I'm not doing this. Pandemic hits. Once again, Taylor's in one of those, why would I pay for it if I can do it myself? My wedding's supposed to be coming up. So I decide I'm going to start DIYing wedding stuff, like my bridesmaid gifts. And I buy a Cricut. And I was like, I kind of like this. This is fun. Crickets are fun.
Yeah.
I was like, this is great. Posted in my Instagram stories, like what I was doing, like not thinking anything of it. People were like, you should sell this. And I was like, I'm depressed. My hours are cut at work. I have nothing better to do with my time because we're in a global pandemic and I'm trapped at home. I was like, I should sell stuff on the internet. And it was so funny because I remember when I first decided to like reopen it, my husband was like, I told you for years you should do this. And I was like, yeah, well, I'm very stubborn. So
everything happened in perfect timing, I guess.
Yeah. And then we needed masks.
Yes, we did.
We needed masks. And I was like, hey, why would I buy masks when I could make them myself? Once again, posted them in my Instagram story because I was making them for me and my friends. And people were like, please tell me you're selling them. And you have no idea how stubborn I was about this at first. I was like, I'm not selling masks. I was like, I never want to sell anything that's sewn again. Like I was so dead set against it. And I also was like, I also don't want to profit off of the pandemic because that's what I felt like I would be doing. Yeah. And it was like very much, I was like, I can't, I don't know. But ultimately I decided to post a few masks. They sold out immediately. And I was like, okay, this could work. Like this is good. So yeah, Gingerbread Couture was kind of like born from that. And I know I get a lot of questions about like Gingerbread Couture, like what kind of name is that?
It makes perfect sense to me.
It makes sense to anyone that knows me personally. And my whole thing is handmade with holiday magic.
So cute.
So cute, right? But Gingerbread Couture, it just made sense. Couture is actually my husband's last name. So I wanted to incorporate that. It's the French word for sewing.
It was meant to be.
Wait, it's the French word for what?
Sewing.
No way, really?
Yeah. Do you ever realize my name is literally Taylor Couture and just laugh hysterically?
Oh my God.
My business because of
your
my
name is Taylor Sewing.
Yeah.
That's so
but it's also like
funny.
A Taylor.
Yeah.
And then my middle name is Jean.
Oh my God. Your middle name
is Jean, which is a material.
Taylor, that's amazing.
Your name has been a manifestation of your destiny your entire life, and you didn't know it until the pandemic.
Oh my
That's
God.
what I'm saying. Like it was just meant to be. Granted, Couture is not my legal last name. That's a whole other thing. I still have, but I pretend it's my social last name.
I was gonna say it's on your Instagram. So as far as we're concerned,
my last name is Couture. And then the whole gingerbread thing is actually like an ode to my grandmother because she used to love to bake cookies, and she always said she wanted to start a cookie baking business, and she never got to. So that's like a little nod to my grandmother because she believed in everything I did. And, you know, if there's anyone that believed in me more than my husband, it was my grandma. But she's sadly not with us anymore. But it's kind of like a little bit of an ode to her. And gingerbread is just my favorite cookie. So yeah, that's how Gingerbread Couture was born. In the middle of a pandemic, I did end up quitting my job to do Gingerbread Couture full time. After only doing Gingerbread Couture, I opened May 18th, 2020 was the day I opened that shop. My last day of my job was in August. I was not doing it for that long, and I jumped ship. My job also offered voluntary separation though. So basically if I were to quit, I would get all these nice perks that went along with it. And for me, it just made sense because I was like, I'm going to move to Canada anyway. I'm going to leave anyway. So I might as well take it now and get the perks along with it rather than waiting it out. That was really scary to quit my job and be like, this is it. Like, and I really took it running full steam ahead. I've added that now I no longer make any Cricut products. Sometimes I use my Cricut to cut out patterns for things, but I sew all day long. I make a lot of hair accessories now, which is hysterical because I'm like, I am once again making Disney inspired hair accessories.
Here we are.
They're so cute.
This many years later, and I am back to making hair accessories in ears, like full circle moment.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's been crazy though. And I'm so proud of it. And I'm so proud of everything I've done with it. And I've really stuck with like the whole hey, my branding is literally just Christmas and I'm going to run with it.
But it's such a good brand to have because you can do
is
anything with Christmas and you have the Disney aspect too. So it's like the two most fun brands ever.
It's just me. Surprise. I am the brand. Real life Christmas is here.
Honestly.
Christmas.
Kristen, before we got on here, I called myself the CEO of Gingerbread Couture, and then I went, Christmas elf officer.
Aww.
Jess was like, you have to say that.
Aww.
Chief elf officer. It's my title.
Owning your own business and running it by yourself is more than a full-time job. You are working around the clock. There are so many days where you're like, it is 11 p.m. and I'm still here. And I just think a lot of that kind of gets overshadowed because, of course, like everything on the internet and social media, it's like you see this like outpouring of product and you're just like, oh, this, it just happens, and people don't understand the amount of work and time and dedication and pivoting that you constantly are having to do. I would love to like shed some light on the realities of that, because I think the part of this whole month and this theme is like empowering the people who listen to this and empowering ourselves to take those leaps and risks. And if there's anyone listening that wants to start their own business or wants to collaborate with someone on something, it doesn't exactly know where to start or what the day-to-day would look like, I would love if you could share that.
Yeah. So my days are very hectic and it probably doesn't seem like it. They're probably like, oh, she just sits around and sews for a few hours a week. And the reality of it is I do work close to 60 hours a week, usually more. I'm not going to ever say that I work 40 hours a week because I don't. There's very few weeks that I have that blessing to only work 40 hours. And even then, when I'm not working, I have a phone in my hand and my business Instagram is on that phone. And if I see I have a DM, I am one of those people who does not wait to answer it. Like I was like, I have to answer this right away. And the reality of it is, people just don't realize how much work goes in to planning. And, I always say I'm kind of jealous of those small businesses that, maybe, for instance, t-shirt businesses, a lot of them outsource their t-shirts and have a screen printer print them for them. I am so jealous of those people because they don't have to physically make their own product.
Yeah.
Whereas me, I'm sitting physically sewing, cutting. I do all of that myself. The only thing I don't do is print my own fabric. And honestly, if I could, I probably would. And a lot of people also don't realize how much planning goes into it. For instance, all of my fabric is actually pre-order fabric. I place orders for these fabrics months in advance. For instance, I have a fabric that's out for delivery today that I ordered in July. And it's just kind of, it takes so long for it to come in. And there's so much planning that goes into it. I think people are just like, oh, she got fabric and she just made stuff with it. And I'm like, oh no, like I bought this fabric 6 months ago and I've known exactly what I was going to do with it for 6 months.
Yeah.
Which can be challenging sometimes too. When people are like, are you going to restock this? And I'm like, if I get more of the fabric, it's going to take me like 5 months to get it. It's also a lot of repetitive work. I'm very lucky that I've kind of created like a weekly schedule for myself. I know a lot of people struggle with that, of like making a small business and making it feel like a job, just because you're like, how do I make it into like a schedule? So I do restocks on my site every Monday. And because I do things every Monday, I have like a weekly timeline that I have to stick to. I also think that people think, oh, you're a small business owner, so you just make your own hours. And I was like, well, that's true. But that's also can be a very negative thing, because that means you can be like, I'm going to work when I'm not supposed to be. I work almost every Sunday, which I don't think people know because I don't talk about it. So I do work every Sunday mostly. And like Julian's family will like stop by just to say hi. And I will feel so bad, but I'm like, I have to be in my office right now. Like I have something I have to get done. I have a deadline for it.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of other things that go into it, like answering emails, running social media. Thank God my mom's an accountant. Otherwise, I don't know how I would do anything, because she handles all of that for me. And, the social media thing is so frustrating because the algorithm is ridiculous.
Yeah.
And as someone who hand makes their products, I do not have the time to sit and make reels for Instagram.
Right.
But Instagram is so heavily pushing reels right now.
Yeah.
And essentially, if you're not making reels, nothing of your content is being seen.
Right.
And that's so challenging as a business owner, because you're like, I don't have time to do that because most of my sales come from Instagram. That is my main marketing tool. And it has been such a blessing as a marketing tool. But there's also so many other things that go into it. Like trying to find brand reps, by the way, is an actual nightmare. Like it is not easy. And I feel like people are like, oh, you'll reach out to someone and offer them free product and they'll say yes. No, I have gotten turned down more times than I can count.
Really?
Yeah. And that's something that people don't realize, because if you're not getting paid for it, people don't want to do it, which I respect that. But I am still a very small shop.
You also, I think it's important to mention, you are self-funded and self-sustaining. Like you don't have
there is nobody
investors. Yeah.
No. My husband takes my packages to the post office for me, and that is the extent of the help that I have. I have nothing else.
Your employee.
Bless his soul. He is a real trooper. He always goes to the post office for me. And I feel so bad for our postal workers because I always have so many packages, but there's just so much that goes into it that I just do not think people realize behind the scenes. And also there's the whole aspect of, you don't want to disappoint people when things sell out, and then you feel bad. And then people are constantly asking you, when will this restock? And I will say I am very blessed that I do have amazing customers that are so nice to me. Even like in the few times I've had an email, I should knock on wood for this, is I'm very blessed that I don't get a lot of emails that are like, hey, something's wrong with this. I'm very, very lucky that I don't have that. Most of the emails I get like that are because I just accidentally put the wrong product in. Which it happens. I'm one person, but everyone's always so nice about it. And I'm like, why are you guys so nice when I mess up? And I think that's been a major blessing for me too. But yeah,
I don't know if it's luck. I think it's like the reason you don't get those emails is because you pay such close attention to the details and the quality of the product that you're putting out, because you care about the people who are getting it. You're thinking about the person that's going to wear it. You're thinking about the cute pictures they're going to take when they're wearing, like you're thinking about all of those things. And so you want to give them something they're going to be happy with. And that's not something that you find. I mean, even in some small businesses, I think the internet is full of a lot of people just trying to push a cheap product as like a fast money grab. And like sometimes like t-shirt businesses are like that, and that's why like people like you and people like the Lost Bros, like they have really risen above in our minds the rest, because they do pay attention to what people want and how to give them not only what they want, but a really high quality version of it.
And I think it's so important to like pay attention to what you're doing. And maybe it's because I'm just a very detail oriented person, is like, I literally sit and like inspect my scrunchies like this. Like no one can see me as I'm like doing this hand motion, but I inspect that every single one of them before they get packaged. And I also take way too much time packaging things, and that's a fault of my own because I wrap everything in tissue paper and make it all cute.
And it's Christmassy.
Like, that's like part of my branding, and like, it's a Christmas present. And I have like super cute Christmas packaging that has like snowflakes and snowmen on it. The other thing I want to say, and I think it's extremely important to anyone out there that wants to start their own small business, is do not compare yourself to another small business. I'm not the only person out there that makes ears. Ear shops are blowing up on Instagram right now. If I were to sit there and look at other ear shops and be like, oh my gosh, they have so many more followers than me, I would never make it anywhere. If I were to say like, oh, I can't do that. And honestly, I have found myself unfollowing people when I compare myself to them. And that might be an unpopular opinion to do that, because a lot of people
it's great.
Community over competition. I'm like, I'm not saying I'm unfollowing them because we're competitive. I'm unfollowing because I'm looking at their content and being like, well, why can't I do that? And that's just not healthy. Like, don't compare yourself to other shops. And it's also not about numbers. They might have thousands and thousands and thousands of followers, but they might be miserable every day, and you don't know that. I feel like I've also been very good about making sure people know, like, this is my brand, it is me. Whereas some people will just like post their brand and you don't know the person behind the brand. And I feel that's so part of the reason I have such a good relationship with my customers and such a good relationship with my brand reps. And just, I'm so happy every day doing what I do, is because I've created the brand around myself rather than letting the brand take over my life, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I agree. And you really do get what you put out there. And I think that's why you get all of the positivity and collaborative processes from your customers in return, because you're always putting out like that authenticity factor, and like you're infusing your joy and your heart into all your products, and they're all very delicately handmade. Like you really put the time and effort into them, and they are great quality. I have so many masks and scrunchies, and I'm so grateful because I just think your fabrics you choose are the coolest fabrics. Like
they're so cute.
Y'all have no idea how long it takes me to shop for fabrics. It's embarrassing how long it takes.
You find them from the smallest corners of the internet, and you're like, got this one in. And I'm like, how did you find one that was even cooler than the last one you got? Like, they're so
somehow I find stuff that's so niche sometimes too, that I'm like, this is so niche. And I'm like, but it's perfect. Like, I'm like, this is wonderful. As I'm drowning in Christmas fabric.
Because you know that someone is going to love and appreciate it just as much as you.
They're like, I've never seen this before. And I'm not saying I'm the only shop out there that uses the fabrics that I use, but I will say they're rare to see.
They are. You know, you can have anything from princesses to Marvel, Star Wars, Christmas, Elf, anything. Like
anything.
Y'all could only see my fabric shelves right now.
Oh, they're so cool. They're so cool.
Color coordinated because I am who I am.
Exactly. Love that.
Well, I guess to wrap everything up on our question front here, what are your current offerings at Gingerbread Couture, and where can people find you?
Absolutely. So right now I make scrunchies, multiple different types of scrunchies, multiple different types of headband styles, ears, which are my favorite thing to make. Sometimes I have masks. I do not do them as much as I used to because they're just not as popular as they used to be. And also we have a lot of Christmas stuff, a lot. If you ever need Christmas stuff, it's usually in my shop all year round, but you can find all of that at gingerbreadcouture.com or on Instagram at gingerbreadcouture. And because I'm so wonderful, all Rediscover listeners get 10% off with code Rediscover. Woo!
I literally texted Jess and I was like, we should see if Taylor wants to do a code for Rediscover listeners. And she literally texted me back and goes, she's literally making it right now. It's already happening.
I was like, oh, wow. I was going to suggest that. I got you guys.
I love this.
Off. Yeah, we love deals.
This is perfect, just in time for all of the Christmas shopping. I know I have done zero Christmas shopping so far.
So I haven't even thought of it.
For everyone that is so caught up with all of the craziness that this year has been, now you have everything you need to get all of the stocking stuffers for everyone that you love.
Seriously, scrunchies are great stocking stuffers, y'all.
Yeah.
Well, I think this is important to note too. So we're releasing this episode on November 30th. So do you have a timeline of anything for shipping or events coming up?
So fortunately, I don't have any sort of timeline because I'm assuming most of your listener base is in the US, as most of my customer base is in the US. I do live in Canada, which does mean that things don't only have to go through Canada Post and USPS, but they also get to be processed through customs. So there is no specific timeline. However, I will say order as soon as possible.
Today.
Order right now. Yeah. Because with like, especially holiday delays last year were a nightmare.
Yeah.
And I can't picture them being any better this year. And it's just so impossible for me to even predict stuff. Sometimes things have taken less than a week to get to people, like in Florida, which is incredible. But other times it takes weeks and there's no rhyme or reason to it. It's just, the postal service.
You have, as of the moment that this episode is being released, you have almost a month until Christmas.
Yeah, so plenty of time.
Get on there today and order. Use code Rediscover at checkout. Go to Gingerbread Couture on Instagram and click the link in her bio, and it will take you where you need to go.
Follow button too. I would love that.
Yeah, hit the follow button. Turn on. Okay, no, here's what you really need to do. You need to follow, but you need to turn on
notifications.
Because you guys, when she does a drop and releases a fabric, like if we were talking about it before, that fabric goes, we don't know when it's coming back. So you got to get on it while you can. And I just yesterday was Instagram stalking Gingerbread Couture, and I saw those like millennial pink spaceship Earth-esque patterns. And I was like, wait a minute, hadn't even seen that one. So you never know what you're going to miss.
I'm sure that's completely sold out. So
no, I'm sure it is because it's so cute. But I was like, how did I miss this? stupid algorithm. Got to turn on those post notifications.
Turn on post notifications. I have so many people tell me, they're like, I didn't even see what was being released this week. And I'm like, I hate Instagram.
Yeah, you have to turn on post notifications now because the algorithm is whack.
Kills me. Definitely follow Gingerbread Couture. Use code Rediscover. Look out on Mondays for Merry Mondays. That's when all the new drops happen.
Yes.
And we're just so excited we get to actually talk about Gingerbread Couture on an episode now.
My baby.
I know. Oh, well, thank you for sharing all that, Taylor. And
to wrap up, we've been talking for forever.
I know. To wrap up the episode, we're going to go through our rapid fires as we do. So we decided to theme all of Taylor's rapid fire questions to Christmas because what could be better?
It's the holiday season.
So let's get started. Kristen,
okay,
you're up first.
Taking it away. Favorite Christmas movie?
How the Grinch Stole Christmas.
Which version?
The Jim Carrey version.
Excellent. Correct.
So many good one-liners.
Correct. I agree. Could not agree more.
How many times do you watch it a week?
Oh, normal, like when it's not Christmas, once, but now we're moving into like watching it. I might have been watching it like every day. I just love it so much. There's so many things about that movie. I know every single word.
It's brilliant.
Everything's fine.
It's a great movie. All right.
You're our own resident Cindy Lou Who.
Dreams. My name is actually Martha Tay Huvier.
Oh, right.
Martha Tay.
I forgot about that. Yes.
She has the best life every year. No, what can I say?
Very true. All right. Favorite Christmas song?
Like It's Christmas by the Jonas Brothers.
Okay, that's a newer one. So what was your favorite Christmas song before that song existed?
So before that one, this is kind of funny, it was Michael Bublé's version of All I Want for Christmas Is You.
Aw.
That's literally my wedding song.
Aw.
I was hoping you'd mention this.
I feel like it had to be brought up. I love Michael Bublé, one of my favorites, and his version of that song is just magical. And it took me like 2 years to even convince my husband to have us have it as a first dance song, but it made so much sense.
Oh, stop. You made a PowerPoint. You have to tell the people.
I made a PowerPoint. There was a PowerPoint involved in me convincing him. Yeah, it's on TikTok. I have like 5 TikToks and one of them is my PowerPoint.
I love that. We might need to grab a link to that for the show notes. Favorite Christmas activity?
Ooh, baking cookies. Eating cookies.
Well,
eating cookie dough.
And on that topic, what's your favorite Christmas treat?
Gingerbread cookies.
She's not just saying that. I mean, clearly, if you only ate gingerbread cookies for an entire weekend, I think you're like basically Santa at this point. I think that's like the inaugural. It's like the hazing for new Santas. You have to spend an entire weekend.
Mrs. Claus.
Right.
Mrs. Claus.
Santa's a woman.
If God is a woman,
Santa's a woman.
Santa's a woman, and her name is Taylor. I'm Santa, Taylor's version.
I love how off the rails this episode is. It's my favorite. Okay, favorite Christmas decoration.
Oh, okay. So this is hard because it's our first Christmas in our new house. So I do currently have a Nutcracker themed bathroom.
Fun.
That's cute.
I literally have a Nutcracker shower curtain. However, I also have a Whoville gallery wall right now. That's a thing.
I know you don't have time to make reels, but we might need like a reel that's like a little like Christmas at Taylor's tour.
I'm planning on making one of those once everything's done. I'm waiting on a few things still because since like our first house, I was like, there's still a few things I need. I literally, so my house is 110 years old and I have these big, beautiful beams in my kitchen and dining room. I have garland drapes from them right now and ornaments hanging from them. Like I have no chill.
I love that. I love it.
Except I have all the chill because I live in Canada.
Oh my God.
I love it. All right. And then our last rapid fire for you specifically, which you kind of mentioned, what is your favorite gingerbread couture item to make? And then your favorite item overall?
I think my favorite to make and my favorite overall is ears right now.
Okay.
They take so long, but I love them.
It's probably like so satisfying when they like turn out perfectly and you're like, oh.
I'm really proud of myself because the patterns that I use for ears now and the way I make them, I 100% came up with it by myself. Like I didn't go watch YouTube videos or look up like how to make Mickey ears. Like I sat in my office one day and was like, I'm going to figure out how to do this in a way that works for me and makes good quality ears. And I did it. And I have some people tell me they're like their favorite small shop ears. And that is the biggest compliment in the world you can get.
Our final segment here is the rapid fire questions that we ask to all of our Rediscover guests. We want to know Taylor's version of these as well. So
Taylor's version.
The first being, as always, what does living authentically mean to you?
Living your real life. Do I even have to like have to like elaborate on that?
No, you don't. I love that because it's
my
just like
entire
this is
branding.
Yeah.
It's like I try to very much live my life authentically. When I'm sad about something on the internet, everyone knows it. I mean, sometimes I don't necessarily say why I'm sad until a few weeks later, like when we canceled the wedding, everyone knew something was wrong.
Yeah.
But there was several reasons why I was waiting to tell people about that. I had to contact vendors. I had to tell all of our like bridal party. Like there was a whole lot that went into that. But I feel like just living your real life and, you know, you're not going to do something just because someone else is doing it. If you want to go somewhere, go there. Like I'm going to go to places that I want to go to, and I'm going to do the things that I want to do. I'm going to carry a giraffe around Disney World because I feel like it.
Yep.
And I'll run with a selfie stick and make stupid videos that everyone for some reason thought were funny.
They were
very dangerous. I have another selfie stick now. I'm going to do it because I can. And I think a part of that is also being like, and I'm not going to care what people think.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's huge.
Living your real life.
If you could travel to one place anywhere in the world right now, where would it be and why?
Whoville.
Okay, we've never gotten
an acceptable answer. We never have. We probably never will
again.
There's
no place like Whoville on Christmas Day. Come on.
I
love
that answer.
I accept that answer.
North Pole. Close follow-up.
North Pole.
Oh
your turn, Dad.
All right. Moving on.
Well, we're not expecting that answer.
Moving your minds.
What is one thing you would be doing every day if your life were free of limitations?
So here's the thing. I feel like I just kind of do what I want to begin with.
That's good.
So
like, you don't perceive any limitations.
I'm just like, oh, I want to do it. Obviously, like there are things I would do if I had more money. Like I would probably travel more. But like Julian and I have every intention to travel a lot as soon as we can. We just haven't been able to because of the Canadian border. Maybe I would throw a wedding. I don't know.
Yeah. Your contentedness is like infectious, but you're so content. So you're like,
I'm so content. Like I sit in my basement and sew scrunchies all day and snuggle with my dog. And honestly, it's a great life to live.
That is a great life.
We could learn a lesson about like being happy in the midst of your whatever circumstances from you for sure.
I very much sometimes just feel like I'm Lorelai Gilmore, like, you know, small town. I smell snow. My husband is also Luke Danes. Like he dresses like him. Anyway, let's not go on a Gilmore Girls tangent because we'll be here for another hour. But anyway, I just think that I'm so happy and content right now with what I'm doing. That's like, I would go see my family. I might go to Disney World. It's been forever since I've been there. I might, you know, go on the travel plans that we had planned that had to be canceled. But if there's like nothing that I'm like, I'd go do that. Like, I'm good.
That's awesome.
I love that. Okay. Final question. What is one childlike quality that you think would be beneficial if adults utilized it in their daily lives?
Probably the ability to just think that anything is possible. I feel like, you know, when you're a kid, you ask a kid what they want to be when they grow up, they're like, I'm going to be an astronaut and go to the moon. And you're like, yes, you are. As an adult, you're like, I have to go to like space school for that. That's
Space school.
Space school.
Space school. I don't know what it's called. Space Academy.
Nope, it's space school.
NASA University. I don't know. But just like think about how like you ask a kid what they want to be when they grow up, and they give you like a dead set answer. They're like, that's what I'm doing. Or even when I worked in the boutique, you'd ask a kid a question and they would give you the most wild answers. And I'm like, same.
Yep.
Like, they're inspiring. And I think that every adult should have that, like, hey, if I want to do it, I can just do it. Like, who cares? And that's that whole, like, without limitations thing. It's like,
you don't perceive them.
No, like you don't even
They're
think
not
about it as a kid. You're
Yeah.
like, when I grow up, I'm going to be a surgeon. And then as an adult, you're like, I have to go to a lot of years for medical school for that. I don't think I want to.
Yeah.
But I couldn't. But I just think it's so important, you know, even as adults, that we should think that way and think like, hey, I can do this.
Mhm.
Like, what's stopping me? And it's
Yeah.
kind of like how Gingerbread Couture was born, because I was like, what is stopping me right now? There was nothing stopping me. So I said, I'm going to do it. And it worked out. Take risks.
And I think that's a really solid note to end on for this episode. This has been
a journey.
so fun. What a great
This has
episode.
been so long. And if you're still here, hi.
I'm sure my mom's here. Hi, Mom.
I
Hi,
mean,
Mom.
yeah, I was gonna say mine will be too. I genuinely, my face has not hurt this much from smiling since we did the episode with Stacy. So
That is like the biggest compliment in the world. I'm gonna
I mean that.
cry.
My face is actually hurting from smiling so much,
I'm a
and
comedian.
I just love, you have such a we talk about being childlike versus childish, but you have such a childlike energy, and your free spirit and your willingness to just like let life happen the way it's meant to and roll with the punches as they come is something all of us can learn from, no matter what season of life we're in. So I know you have such a busy life and such a crazy schedule, and I'm just so thankful that you took this time out.
I'm still shocked y'all asked me. I was like,
oh my gosh.
Like when Jess texted me, I legitimately cried, first of all. I cried about everything. Like, I was like, I'm tearing up. I was like, you guys think that I'm that great?
We do.
Like,
Of course you are.
Thank you for having me. This was a good conversation. And it's good too, because I feel like I haven't reflected on all of this in a while, because I've just been so busy that I don't like sit and reflect on it. So this was really nice to be like, wow, I've done some pretty cool stuff.
You have. You truly are extraordinary, Taylor. And thank you so much for taking the time to go through all of that with us. And it was just so fun. I felt like I was listening to like a novel or watching a movie. Like, this is your real life. And
this is my Hallmark movie.
Yeah, it is your Hallmark movie, but better quality.
Honestly, you should sell the rights to your story and let them make a movie about it.
Girl that grew up in a town called the Christmas City, moves to Canada, starts her own business. Sounds like the plot.
Someone listening knows somebody at Hallmark. You guys.
Actually, legitimately, someone that's listening probably does know someone at Hallmark.
Well, this needs to happen. Next thing, we're manifesting it together.
We're manifesting a Hallmark movie starring moi. It's Taylor version.
I was gonna say, do you want to play you?
I want to play myself. I don't think anyone else could.
No, nobody could.
Be me. I was like, it's not the
That's
same.
That's a great exercise. That's a good takeaway from this. Imagine your life as a movie, and then imagine who you would want to play you. And if you can't think of anyone who could do it better than you, then you know you're exactly where you're meant to be.
Exactly. You're killing it.
Boom. Drop the mic.
Drop the code rediscover on gingerbreadcouture.com to save 10% on all of your holiday goodies.
Use it. Live it.
Love it. All right. Live, laugh, love. Anyway.
Live, laugh, real life.
Now it seems like we're getting a little silly. Like we drink like 3 gallons of hot chocolate.
We should give the disclaimer that no alcohol was involved in the making.
No, I literally have been drinking tea.
I'm having water with lemon.
I had hot chocolate.
Peppermint tea. That's it. Just peppermint tea.
That's the best kind of tea.
Anyway,
thank you guys for being here.
Thank you
Taylor, for being our special guest. And thank you all for honoring so many incredible women doing extraordinary things all month long and always. I think this was one of my favorite themes that we've done. I could do so many more episodes on this theme because I think everyone's story is so inspiring. And they all have that common thread of life's journeys interconnecting and piecing together so beautifully, but everybody's is different, which I think is really, really interesting. So thank you for listening. Thank you for being here, and
go find the incredible women in your life and tell them they're doing great. And if you stick around, in 2 weeks, we will be starting our December theme, which, though not Christmas themed, is going to be so much fun. We're going international, kids. And you're invited to come along. So
until next time, we'll talk to you soon.
Bye.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of Rediscover.
Please subscribe and leave us a review wherever you're listening. Your reviews are what keep us going, and we'd love to hear from you.
Join us every Tuesday for a new conversation and let us know what you think we should talk about next.
Follow us on Instagram at positively.kristen and at jessicafay508. And check out Jess's blog at theroadjesstraveled with 1l.com.
Until next time,
Stay frumpy!